Good morning, everyone. Hope everyone's having a good morning. Before we get started on a recap, are there any follow-up questions from yesterday, or any comments anyone would like to make, based on what we talked about yesterday, or even previous weeks? Any questions or anything for you?
Yeah. Good morning, ST.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning, everybody. Yesterday, as I was listening and processing everything that was said, I wanted to, make a comment, but I just figured I would rather start this morning by at least, putting it out and in the beginning. I was just doing a little reading, and I read through a book, in Spirituality Before Religion, and what I'm really just trying to make sure, ST, is that as we know we're Elohim. I think when you spoke of the eight senses and you talked about intuition, this is what the book was speaking on in terms of spiritual evolution. It says, I want to know me. I want to think, see, hear, smell, taste, and feel, but I cannot because I am spirit. I am in potential rest in my eternal space. I want to be and continue to become so that I can know that I am who I am. I am the creator who will know that I am the creator, but the only way to know is to come through physical form. And I wanted to share that thought because as we talk about, I am the creator having a human experience, there's a second cosmic law, in the Kushite teachings that says, I am to treat the creator's creation as I create the creator in me. And so as I, meditate on the teachings of our senses, I think it's the intuition now in terms of coming into that knowledge. And so I just wanted to, at least share that before you get started, so that way my desire is to know me. My desire is to, use my senses in that way that we can continue to appreciate who we are as Elohim. I just want to share those thoughts. I'm done. I'm sorry. I'm done.
No, you're good, George. I appreciate it, and it's funny. We talk about coincidences like that. One of the things I wanted to make sure that I touched on today, how do we measure or how do we validate our intuitions? How do we see the signs? What can we look for? What things that have been in front of our face to really because we've talked about the intuition before. So how do we qualify that? And so I put down a few things today to touch on that as well. So I appreciate that because there is that balance between the two natures that we talked about, and try to manage that at the base.
Thank you.
This is Ron. I think what George just read, it goes along with something Pastor talked about yesterday when we talked about the creating space, and it is part of that is challenging all those religious beliefs and concepts that we've kind of bought into over the years, and uprooting all those things out of you, that being the best way to create space. That sounds like what George was saying, because that's also the knowing of self, making room and allowing for truth to enter you and to take you to a different place of awareness. So just kind of reminded me of that when I heard what he said.
No, definitely. It was actually a lot to unpack yesterday too, when just like kind of thinking back and just going back over it. Audrey brought up a couple of great points too, and some of the comments you made, and George Watson as well. We talked a little bit yesterday, really about not looking at it as contrarian, but looking at a different perspective when you bring it. So yeah, it's a lot to unpack yesterday. But I definitely see that too, Ron. I appreciate it.
ST.
Yes, sir.
As Ron was talking, I thought about how when he's talking about the idea creating space and the purging that we must do. The purging that we do is different than the balance. Purging brings about a knowledge of self and grants us the privilege of having insight. The idea of balance is different than that. The purging is freeing ourselves from those things that has held us in bondage, or freeing ourselves from those things that has given us the impetus to deny who we are. Balance is about knowing that you have the same power to do good as you do to not do good. In other words, balance is understanding what dysfunctionality is and understanding what functionality is. Those things have nothing to do with religion. Religion is the thing that blinds us to those two concepts of functionality and non-functionality. So balance is the idea of knowing that just as I can embrace you, I can also smack you. And balance speaks to the idea of being able to know these things exist within, but at the same time being able to control them or to keep them at bay so they don't bring us to a place of being animals. The animalistic attitude will always be there. The question is, what do you do with it? And that in itself is the balance, because if you don't have the power to make choices between doing what we call right or wrong, then you don't have balance. You only have unicity. And that unicity is not so much with the Creator as it is with the doing right. And so anyway, that's how I see the difference between the purge and balance of religion. The purge and religious beliefs and bringing balance. Thank you. Anyone there?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I was just somehow I got on mute. It's funny because this is George started, and then Ron, and then you. What you just mentioned. One of the things that I was going to talk about intuition is coincidences. So just like there's no coincidence that you guys led off with that. It makes me feel like we're on the right path this morning, because one of the other things I thought about yesterday was when you talked about the purging from religion and moving forward, and then the balancing of it. So many times we say that, okay, we leave religion, and we don't realize that we also have to be healed. And then I was looking at that last night. It's like a healing that takes place, and we think of healing too many times in the physical sense. But one of the things when we talk about the purging of religion and moving ourselves forward, we also have to kind of heal from the scars emotionally, spiritually. There's a healing that takes place, and then that growth happens in the midst of that purging. And I know we say it a lot. We talk about religion a lot as far as some of the negative impact and traditions or some of the things that got us stuck. But there's also a process when we purge that and move forward that we're actually, sort of healing ourselves spiritually in a way too, because that makes room for the growth and that you talked about, because it's always when you're creating that time, that means we're also eliminating something that was wasted our time. and even in that, if you want to call it detox or whatever period, there's a healing that takes place that actually creates that growth to facilitate it and give us that balance once we get that time. And so didn't want to miss any steps, because once you move from one place to another, you also have to have that strength and support and growth underneath it. That's where that balance comes into. That I was sort of looking at that. Does that make sense?
It does. May I speak to
Pastor, may I just
Yes.
ask a question so that it can be included in your comment?
Sure.
This is Barbara. Is it really, as she used the word, waste of time? But if we are on a path and it's where we're supposed to be, is what we've done been a waste of time? Truly.
That's a good perspective. No. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, SC. I'll speak to in a moment.
Yeah, that's definitely. We shouldn't call it a waste. That's a good perspective, Barbara. It's because everything is done to educate us and to move us forward. So I would just say, instead of saying a waste of, we'll just say that it created the opportunity for growth. But yeah, waste may not be the best term for that, but just time that has had us stuck, and once you move beyond it, it helps us create that growth. But thank you.
All of our engagements and all of our experiences make us who we are. And if we indeed do believe that of room or the universe, our creator is not an absentee creator, then regardless of what we face, regardless of the things we embrace, all of these things were set in our pathway for the purpose of bringing us to where we are now. In regards to the idea of healing, when we understand that these religious concepts that we have been taught, that we have embraced, are foreign to the scriptures, yet we still experience apprehension when we walk away from them, and when we make certain statements that we have been taught with antithetical. For example, when we talk about the marriage of Jesus and Mary, in the beginning, we spoke of that with a bit of trepidation, but now we are comfortable with it, and that being comfortable with it means that we were healed from that aspect of religion that had done damage to our memory and to the journey that shows us who we are. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah. Anyone else? But yeah, that's definitely sort of the place we want to go today. Any other questions?
Yes, it's Ron.
Hey.
I do have a question that I want to address. Something you said yesterday. Mentioned it to Pastor. I liked his explanation on it. I was wondering if he would talk about it today. You mentioned meditation. We're talking about meditation, and you were talking about that it's sometimes 5 minutes is the length of time you can stay there, and that got my attention because that I can relate to that. And you could go to a bookstore and there are books on how to meditate. But I'm wondering, is it what we are searching for and where we are? Maybe all we need is the 5 minutes. Maybe that's the level and the place we're supposed to be. And and because others may do it differently, may not be something that we need to look at or compare to, as to what, how whether or not we're doing this right or we're being effective or whatever. So that's just something that caught my attention. I meant to bring up yesterday, and I forgot about it. We went somewhere else. So
Yeah, I'll address it.
okay.
First of all, meditation. What brought it to mind, actually, let me back up to that point. Meditation, one's question about it made me think about it, or brought it to mind what it is. When we think about meditation, we think about the meditation that we are familiar with, which happens mostly with Buddhists. That's what comes to our mind. However, that's the Buddhist way of meditation, but that's not necessarily meditation itself. The idea of 5 minutes or the idea of a lifetime, those things are meditation also. The idea of the meditation when it comes to the African is so different than what we have been taught or what we have read or what we have experienced as meditation. When we think about those monks who meditate, that in itself is a type of ritualistic religion. Now, do I think it brings positivity to the earth? Yes, I do. I do believe that the intent is to purify the earth, so it does bring positivity to the earth. However, since out of the womb of Africa came every entity in this earth, every being in this earth, then I do believe that meditation has to be defined, for lack of a better word, by the African, but because of the African being the first source of meditation. When you talked about, would you unmute your phones, please? When you talked about praying without ceasing, talking about meditating without ceasing, it doesn't mean that you assume a lotus position and meditate and close your eyes and sit there forever. It speaks to the concept of being in a constant state of meditation. And when the African is in a constant state of meditation, we are able to see what changes in the earth. And examples of that are what we are experiencing now. Our desires are our meditations. Our desire was to shine a light on racism, white superiority, white privilege, to shine a light on misogyny and all the other things that we've talked about in the past and that we have seen exposed during this period of time. However, we have not seen that kind of exposure or that type of change as a result of the meditation that has been engaged in for centuries by the monks. But I do believe it has brought to the earth a type of stability so that we could get to this place where we understand that with the African meditation is different, and that's where the change comes. And the change comes because of the proximity that the African has always had with spirituality, regardless of the religions that it has embraced. The concept of meditation with us, it doesn't have to be 5 minutes. It has to be a lifetime. It doesn't have necessarily be stepping away from everything to meditate. However, it is a constant state of desire, a constant state of meditation. Even when you are at work or in conversation about something that's not related to what we're teaching, if your desire is balance, your desire is righteousness for the earth, then you are in a conscious state, a continuous state of meditation, be it consciously or subconsciously. Right now, as we teach and learn and embrace, we are in a state of meditation. It's simply different than what we have been taught about meditation. So the bottom line is that focus on desire and righteousness, love and kindness are meditative in themselves. Having said all of that, I don't want you to beat yourself up because when you make an attempt to meditate, as we have been taught, your focus continuously shift, or you find it difficult to meditate beyond 5 minutes. Remember the time when all of us meditated at the same time? We made the effort to do that. And what happened is the average time of meditation in the way that we've been taught to meditate was indeed 5 minutes. So do I think that we should step away from everything at periods in our lives to engage in this? Yes, I do. However, we must understand that that's already built in us. The 8th day is the day of meditation. And he rested on the 8th day. It begins everything all over again by having a desire for righteousness. The other period of meditation is Sabbat. Sabbat is not a period of meditation in the classical state of it, classical meaning of it. Sabbat, the 7th day, is a state of meditation of remembrance. It is to remember where we came from, remember who we are, remember for what purpose we are in this earth. Sabbat is a period of reflection on not only on our Creator, but for the purpose for which we were created. And if we look at the 7th day, the 7th day, based upon its earliest understandings, that's what we will find. It's not just about remembering to be submissive to a Creator. It's remembering that we are also creators. Thank you. I hope that helps clear that up or give some sense of understanding. If there are questions, please raise them.
I like that.
Yeah,
I think.
yeah. No, I was gonna say, yeah, that sort of put it into perspective, because and just to expand on what I said about the 5 minutes yesterday too, it's like you said, your desires, you meditate on your desires, and basically I look at that 5 minutes is that it my desire gets aligned, and I really look at it as an alignment period where I'm centering everything. And then, like you said, I approach the rest of the day, that alignment and that centering, let that guide me in between the time of the next alignment and centering. So, yeah, it's like you're not stopping, or you're not just doing it and stopping for the rest of the day. So I do take that with me, and you reflect on your day also, and you just kind of allow that alignment and the desire that you centered just to be your guidance. And that's the thing that kind of guides you through your day, through your week, whatever's in between that period. But you definitely, just like you said, Pastor, it's a different state of it at that point. But it still is the thing that kind of guides your day, your week, and all that centered around the desires and who we are. And then you align that together, and then you allow that to kind of guide you. So that's thanks for expanding on that. I'm sorry, Ron.
Oh, no problem. I would just what I want to say. He said something else when he talked about the 7th and the 8th day, the 7th day of Sabbath, a time of remembering. It just and the 8th day, also that's time to reflect and new beginning. It just all tied into the what you've been talking about, the 8th sense and uh, the memory and the reflections, all of that just kind of tied in together. So that just caught my attention when he said that.
I think that that's the state that most of us have been in right, and didn't realize it. What came to mind was when Kathy talked about how adverse circumstances enter her space, and rather than react to them, she center herself and respond to it. That in itself is both the seventh and the eighth day, both the seventh and the eighth sense. It's both seventh and eighth, seventh sense and seventh day, because she's bringing balance to herself. That's the seventh sense. And the seventh day is because she's reflecting on who she is and her purpose of being in the earth. And it's the eighth day, in that the eighth sense encompasses everything, all the senses, in addition to being able to have a sense of what is to be, by virtue of embracing the reality that you are Elohim. The eighth day, or the eighth sense, gives us the mindset of Elohim, and the eighth day gives us a sense of a beginning. So when you look at what she was talking about in terms of those adversities, she brought balance to herself, and then she started fresh on the journey, and she entered a new space and had a new beginning that dealt with those adversities that made her stronger rather than weaken her. And I hope I'm addressing that, Kathy, in the sense that you were giving it when you talked to us about it a few weeks ago. Thanks. Oh, by the way, this is James Richard.
Yeah. And I think what you just described also, Rev, is the clarity that we talked about yesterday. Is like when we're having that clarity, and it gives you the ability to kind of delineate between, what we talked about shaping and creating, for example. But that having that clarity that you described, that balance you described, that's really the clarity that we're, confirming and validating everything that we are and what we've been doing in the process. So that's sort of that clarity that you were speaking to there.
All right, thank you, sir. I want to ask Kathy, is that what her experience was? Is that described the experience that she was talking about? She shared that with us.
Which Kathy are you talking about?
My Kathy with the K.
Which experience are you referencing?
When you talked about how adversity comes to you and you sit down and you focus on it, you don't get excited about it, you don't make any decision about it until you center yourself.
Yes, I was thinking when you guys were talking about whether it's a 5-minute meditation or however long, I guess when I'm learning from just learning to sit with myself and just process from the inside out what I'm feeling about a situation, and that clears me up and centers me to know what I need to do next. And sometimes it's nothing at all. Just sit with it and just make certain you don't get into, I think it takes me also to the conversation that we were having yesterday about the company you keep. Don't get into the wrong thinking. Don't align yourself with the negativity that's coming at you, because company you keep to me also means, what am I going to let in? What am I going to allow in? It may not be physically sitting with someone, but am I going to adopt and take on their attitude as well of the person or the thing that's bringing that negativity to me? So I was listening and thinking from the onset, I've been thinking of seeing meditation in my own life very differently, because it's not about, for me, and I can only speak to my own experience, it's not about me trying to steal away and find 5 minutes or 10 minutes. It's a continuous process of what I'm doing when things are coming at me all day long. how am I processing that? How am I sitting with that? And how am I internalizing what's going on with me? And then once I come from that place of balance and being centered after sitting with it, it helps me to be able to move forward. So I say yes, everything y'all have described is basically what I'm learning to do through my own meditation, because I see it as not just the way you said the Buddhists and all the others have taught us. And it's not me needing to chant or me needing to sing or hum or do anything, but just sit in the midst of, even in an office with chaos going on around me, being still and knowing that I am. And what I mean by that is knowing that I am capable of handling what's going on if I don't let something knock me out of that place of balance. So yes, I agree with what you said. Thank you.
And that was part of my concern with that when S said it, is to recognize that our desire is pure, and the thing that the path that we are being led on, mine may be different than what Kathy's doing when I said do my meditations, but it is true, and that is what works for me. So it may not follow a book or a script that somebody else wrote, but and I think we have also been conditioned over our lifetimes to think that the things that we do are not as real or done properly. And that may be in the back of our minds. But just know that desire is taking us to a place of truth and sincerity. And it may not look like anything else that would be familiar to anyone else. So, thank
Right.
you.
Even our breathing, when we talk about breathing on behalf of each other, breathing to deal with a circumstance. It's not that we stop and say, okay, now I'm breathing for you. It's reminding that our breath is life, breath is spirit. And when we say we're breathing for each other, what we're actually doing is embracing your spirituality and shielding it from the onslaught of negativity. What we're actually doing when we talk about breathing for each other, we're reminding each other that the whole purpose of my breathing is not simply for me to keep my body alive. It's for me also to be that fence around you, that fortification that is needed when we go through those periods of uncertainty at times, or those periods where we are bombarded all day long or bombarded daily. So I think that from this point forward, when we talk about breathing for each other, we will have a different perspective on what that is actually saying, that we are truly living for each other's balance. And I'm not talking about each other in terms of just people on this zone. I'm talking about for humanity as a whole. I'm speaking globally of this idea of breathing. Thank you.
That's one other thing I want to go back and address from yesterday, because I believe it's because Audrey brought up a really good question, about and Kathy kind of touched on it a little bit too. As people approach us and some of the negativity there, and and that was one of the things I think I told her yesterday. So I'm gonna think about that a little more. One of the things I did see is about that, just I wanted to point out when it comes to the intuition part of us, is that, just like Barbara said several weeks ago about, sensing the energy, what one of the things we also have to do as well is when we feel like we have that negative person approaching us, or, it's not something that's lining up with us, is that intuition always teaches us to find the good in that person, no matter how small what we think it is. Find the good in that person and reflect that energy to them. So that was one of the things I did want to touch on from yesterday, was how do we handle that? One of the ways we handle it is always sensing the good in that person and reflecting that energy for them. And then if you got to leave, you leave. But that should always be our mindset. If you're in a situation where someone is sort of a negative, off kilter, whatever, you find that good and reflect that energy to them, in them, and you just kind of leave it alone and go about what we need to do. So I just wanted to add that as well. That was something I thought about yesterday.
And SC, not only that, SC, it frees us also from seeing people through the eyes of politics or the societal law that is not just at all. It also frees us from saying, well, this is business. For example, if you see something, we think about how these shootings endanger the lives of others, and we engage the people who are doing it. We also with the divinity that they are, and in doing so, we actually push our positive energy towards them, but also the business aspects of it. You know how people usually when we talk about this as business, we are not talking about running a business. We're not talking about managing a business. When we talk about business, we talk about money.
Hello. Did we lose Pastor? I think one of the things he was saying about business is that nobody wants to take the L, and that's what we always try to protect ourselves against that loss too as well. It's
Sorry,
okay, go ahead.
We usually talk about money when we are talking about business, and we have a tendency, whether it be in our minds or whether it be to separate spirituality from what we are separated from money, money. You have to have the same positive energy towards humanity, whether you're engaged in business with them or not, or whether or not you feel like they have done you wrong when it comes to your finances, or when it comes to anything that pertains to those things that you embrace as being necessary to sustain you in this earth. And when we usually talk about business and engage in and conflating it with the idea of money management, we are also putting a premium on this idea of money. We are actually elevating it above the spiritual essence of our being. And because we ain't talking about just church stuff. We're not talking about spiritual. We talking about business, because the business aspects of this is different. No, it is not. It is not different. It is the same. And when we elevate it that way, what we are doing is we are oscillating between our spirituality of the spirituality of Elohim and the God of this world, money, which is business. So we have to be very cautious about how we deal with that, how we approach that, and how we speak to that. It has been so deeply ingrained in us by the church that the church is a business, and the spirituality of the church is separate from the money aspect of it. That's been drilled into us. And it seems as though that is one of the most difficult things for us to be purged of, that concept. So I guess the reason I'm saying this, I know the reason I am, is because I want us to always be cognizant of that and deal with everything in our lives from the perspective of spirituality, because nothing in our lives should be predicated on business, politics, or the legal system as it stands in this earth. Thank you.
Anyone else have any comments on that?
Yes, this is Jackie, and I got a question. If we could back up just a little, because Pastor and I had talked about the meditation, and Kathy and I. So I guess my question is the breathing and the meditation, is that the same? Does it go hand in hand?
Breathing is actually providing life and energy for the earth. And the things that you focus on, the things that you meditate about, meditating, speaking to desire, determines the energy that you put out there. For example, if my focus is selfish, then the energy I put out there does not benefit humanity. As a matter of fact, it becomes an obstacle for this journey that we are on, and we deem that to be negative energy. If my desire is pure, as Ron spoke of earlier, then my breathing is for the benefit of humanity. The life that I exude by breathing is for the benefit of humanity. So both of them are intertwined, Jackie. They are inextricably tied together. The breathing, you're going to do that. The life giving, you're going to do that. The question is, what do you give life to? And that is determined by your meditation / desires. Does that help you?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And one of the benefits too, after going back, one of the benefits of when we look at the eight senses as a whole, we started talking about intuition early on into this lesson. One of the benefits of the intuition is that when you are aligned and centered like that, your intuition also serves as a place of security and safe. Like it gives you that feeling of being secure and safe in any endeavor that we're approaching or doing, and that's the thing that really allows us to be free, and we shouldn't be obligated to try and create a win or a loss, but just like you said, just to be. But I just wanted to state that one of the benefits of the intuitive nature is that it gives you a sense of feeling secure and safe. And that's also tied into just the awareness of that identity, but it gives us that security. And so that's one of the things that when you're really, I'm not telling you feeling invincible, but you're feeling secure and safe, that's one of the things that, or one of the benchmarks, if you want to say that, let you know that you're definitely operating at a higher level of intuition.
Yes. Not only that, I'd like to add this as well. The seven senses give us security. They are there to protect us until we are able to realize who we are, being Elohim. And when we embrace that, the senses that have protected us, they continue to do that. However, the eighth sense shows us that we are the protectors of humanity. We are the protectors of this realm, period. So all of that, all of the senses speak to a type of security, and that eighth is definitely a security blanket for the whole of humanity and all that is created in this physical realm. Thank you.
Thank you for expanding on that. Does that make sense to everyone? Because it does. It puts us. Yeah, I guess what I'm trying to do now is just kind of give us an idea of what are the benefits that we can kind of see and benchmark and feel and know that, okay, validate this, and that what Pastor just said was definitely one of those things that when you get to that point of feeling that, you understand there's a definite validation to this, and you see the benefits for mankind spiritually. But anyone have any other questions on that? Okay. And one of the other things that, since we seem to be into the intuition portion of it now, and we talked a little bit about visions and dreams yesterday. One of the other benchmarks, if you want to say, of the intuition is we've already said, like, finding the good in someone. But I mentioned it earlier on this call, when we first started with George and Ron and then Pastor, some of the statements they made. There's no coincidence. And I think even Audrey mentioned this several weeks ago about being the same person over and over again. But diving into this now, so just like we started this lesson this morning, it seems like it's flowing based on being bridged from yesterday, but the things that they open up with, we hadn't really discussed it in that way, in that order, but just seeing that, it just, reiterates this number one intuitive tool or benchmark, is that there are no such thing as coincidences or patterns. When you see things and you know they're going to happen before they happen, and you feel like, oh, that's a coincidence or a pattern or something that I've witnessed or deja vu before, it just goes to show that you don't know the full detail or the extent of it. But when you recognize it, you realize that, hey, that's you can say it's a coincidence, but that's really not a coincidence. So when George opened up what he said this morning, the first thing was, I didn't actually hear it or see it in that way, but I had it kind of written down, and he just kind of really opened it up, expanded on it. Just no coincidence there. It's a pattern of things that we constantly see now, that when we are all operating together like this, the benefits of intuition also allow us to see these things as they are and realize they're not a coincidence, and it's just an ongoing pattern of things that we sort of get locked into and that are second nature to us because we feel it and we see it really before it happens. You just don't really see the full extent of it, if that makes sense, David. That comes off. Okay. Oh, go ahead, Pat.
I think that what you just said carries us back to what Barbara said earlier about her actually interrogative statement about the idea of wasting time. That speaks to what you just said, as speaks to that as well. There's no such thing as a coincidence, and there's no such thing as wasting time either, because everything is done for a reason, a purpose. Even those things that we deem to be distasteful. The shootings in the mall in Columbia yesterday was done for a purpose. It opens our eyes as well as and it clearly shows us those things that we are destined to change. Those things that we are destined to bring balance to. Is one thing I will say about the nature of the principle of the African, and I'm not talking about individuals. I'm talking about the concept of the African, not the individual person or people. The concept is that, excuse me, whatever that the African engages in, that he engages in it to the max. You're going to be really, really evil, or you're going to be really, really good. Meaning that whatever we embrace, we take it to the fullest extent. And I can give you examples of that. The gangbangers who did that in that mall, they are taking being gangster to the nth degree. The idea of being Christian, we have taken it to the nth degree. We embrace what was introduced to us as Christianity more than the people who introduced it to us. If we are going to engage in a business venture, we take it to the max. So what I'm saying is this, excuse me, nature is not to be on today, off tomorrow, that kind of thing, or to be lackadaisical about the things that we embrace. Whatever we embrace it for real, and that is the reason it is so imperative that we recognize the concept of being African, and begin to for lack of a better word, well, I'm not going to use that word because it takes you someplace else. The African must be cognizant of its conceptual responsibility to be righteous, so that righteousness can prevail in the earth. And knowing that righteousness is far stronger than unrighteousness, then when we perpetuate this concept of righteousness by virtue of how we speak and how we live, and based upon what we embrace, then we have what I call a spillover or a outpouring of righteousness, so that those things like that happen at the mall will open the eye of those who are engaged in those things and begin to alter them, and as well as opening the eye of those who are engaged in what has been introduced to us as Christianity, Islam, Judaism, etc. It is our desire to have an outpouring of our essence, so that these things will begin to be baptized, if you will, in the outpouring of righteousness, thus being changed and finding some sense of balance within themselves, so that these things can be brought under control or brought into a place of balance. Thank you. I hope it makes sense.
It does for sure. And when things like that happen to you, you feel like, get a grip on, thankfully no one was, from what I read, no fatalities, but, these patterns are things that we notice, and going back to what you said about the time as well, just to emphasize where there is no waste of time, and to throw another sort of a benchmark, and this is something real, and we'll all, I think once I say this, you'll all kind of take a look at this during the course of the week. And it's something we've all questioned before, is that one of the other things we look at is, have you ever noticed that there's a certain time of day that you always notice, whether you're in your car, at home? When we used to go into the building on Sundays, there's always a certain time of day that you notice, whether it be 2:30 on the clock, 6:15, 5, whatever, and you take it for granted, but it's like you always see that time. And subconsciously, there's a lot going on there with us as well. But does that make sense to anyone? Does anyone you experience a certain time, and does that affect your mood? Does that remind you of something? And I'm going somewhere with that, but I noticed during the course of a week that there's always a certain time of day that catches my attention.
Yes, I experienced that quite a bit. And the thing that really catches my attention is that most of the time, I would say over 95% of the time, when I look at the clock, there are three digits, the same digits are there, 111, 222, 333, etc. Very rarely I look at a clock and there's not those types of numbers are presenting themselves. And I embrace the energy of them, even though I know they speak to multiple things. I do think that they're there for a reason, and whether it be to recognize the time of day by virtue of what you're doing at that moment, or what you're looking at that moment, or who's calling you at that moment. I think that it warrants our consideration in terms of making an effort to find meaning in everything that we encounter in that way. Thank you.
No, thank you. And one of the things that I realized this morning about that is that it does validate us being in an intuitive state. And it, going back to what Kathy said earlier, it's not a 5-minute period or a 3-hour period, but it's just that guidance during the course of the day. And like you said, if we could, at that moment in time, you see it this week, just kind of reflect at that moment. Because at that state, you're in a state of spiritual awareness, which we constantly are, but you're aware of that awareness, and it's sort of like a validation of our intuitive status. And so, just going back to just no coincidence and patterns being developed, for whatever reason that catches our eye, it's an awakening of some sorts, and it's just an intuitive pattern that, for each individual, you kind of figure out where you're at. But that's just a reminder, or one of the other things that you can see with the physical eye, and that, that sense of it, that there's more to it at that point. And but it's not a coincidence. It's just going back to a form of that memory and recall. We just have to figure out in ourselves what it is. What am I supposed to be giving to the earth at that moment in time? So it's just, as I started looking at the this intuitive status more, just certain things that we get faced with, or we encounter day in and day out, that we don't necessarily explain, but it's there as a guidance for us, and it's there as a validation of who we are at that moment in time. And there's something that we may be giving, or even if it's just a reminder to hold someone in our thoughts. But for each individual, you can figure it out. But it's a validation and a reminder of your intuitive state. Any questions or comments on that?
Yes, I also think it's something that we're to be given, receiving and giving. For example, we look at 11:11 as a gateway. Yes, that means that we are receiving, or we are entering a gateway to receive. However, we also are a gateway for others to enter into the space of knowing who they are. Thanks.
Thank you. And it goes back to us creating that time and space, creating that opportunity. So, like you said, it's either a time for receiving or giving, but the opportunity is there at that point in time. And so, when we start talking about the creating space, that's one of the aspects of it too, that just kind of validates that. And just as you go through your week this week, think about it. If you keep noticing it, some people wake up at a certain time, but there's a lot more to us when we're operating this intuitive state that we're just unlocking, and that's all about that growth as well. And as the intuitive state grows, obviously, what we're giving and receiving to this universe, it grows as well.
One of the things, this is Barbara, one of the things that I've been finding for a while now is that I've been waking up around 4 o'clock, not every night, but enough to know that there's some consistency about it. It doesn't matter what time I go to bed, whether it's 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, doesn't matter. And the question I ask myself is, okay, now that I'm here and I'm awake, what am I supposed to do? And the thing that comes to me is what's going on in the world. And it's not this place or that place or whatever. And I just start breathing. And my breathing is not simply just inspiration, expiration, but it's a conscious breathing out toward countries. I mean, I've even had the macro perspective of the earth itself and breathing upon the earth, with not simply breathing in and breathing out, but with the the expiration, the I don't know if you heard that, but it's you can breathe in and breathe out without making any noise, but it's a conscious breathing out toward whether it's a people or a country or the world, or and it's not, it's not my saying to myself, I need to do this, because it is doing it regardless. And that includes not only countries that that I supposedly favor, but countries that are in disfavor right now too. So it's wherever there is humanity, because even in the place where there is the most cruel dictator, there are human beings who don't necessarily espouse to the evil. They're just there, caught up in it. And so I don't know. I don't want to just. But anyway, that's my thing. I've been waking up at around a certain time. Thank you.
I definitely, because there's a purpose behind it, and that's one of the other things about intuition. It's purposeful, and so if you think of when Jesus left and went up to a mount to high elevation to bring in things for himself, he did it with a purpose, and so I think we're gonna find our purpose for that, and it's gonna be a moment that it's gonna be a revelation to us. We're gonna find our purpose for it now, and I guess maybe that's why I put it out there in the universe to kind of like see what that purpose is, because I feel like everyone at some point in time or another experiences it, and one of the other questions I'll ask you, Barbara, about it is when you wake up and you experience it, does your body seem relaxed? Does your physical body seem relaxed?
Yes, it's no tightness or anything at all. It's just it's like the breathing it becomes part of the giving of whatever I'm breathing. There's no stress. There's no being concerned about what's going on in the world in the sense that I tighten up. It's just it just is. It just breathes.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that research have written down about being that intuitive state. It speaks to like, we're finding that purpose, and then the body is really relaxed because it's basically just a conduit. It just flows in and out of it, and so there should be this relaxation of the body, but we're in an intuitive state, in a high awareness of ourselves at that point, and now just trying to figure out, okay, what's the purpose behind it? Because you wake up or you sit and you kind of relax, but okay, what's the purpose behind it? Because I don't think the intuitive state should ever be a state of stress and feeling overwhelmed. And that's one of the things we go back to the very beginning is that you're actually blocking out or, removing or decreasing the things that would cause some sort of anxiety in us. So I think that state of mind, we're in a place now where we're just going to start figuring out our purpose, and it's going to be a purposeful moment. And that's just, I guess, where I was going with that is that, we even have more opportunity than we know of right now. But like you said, at least just be in a state of being, just be at that moment and let things flow for the good of for mankind and humanity. It's also sort of a connection. I know, Pastor, you referenced when we were all given the time to meditate collectively together at the same time. So it's a state of connection. So all these things can start, becoming one with us, and we realize that it's all flowing out of us. It's who we are. I think we said it last week, like all these things, this intuitive state, it's basically who we are. We're just uncovering it and being it now, and it's just being awakened in us more. And you can see just in mankind in general, there's an awakeness to kind of figure out who they are and going back to their beginning, and people are trying different things. We referenced the Mike Tyson thing yesterday, but people are trying to get into that state of full intuition, into where they're awakened and aware of things that they feel as being clouded and blocked from them day in and day out. So they want to get to that state of, okay, whether they're trying to do it chemically or whatever, but they're trying to get to that state of being who they are at the core. And so all these things, this intuitive awareness, this status that we are aware of now, that's been awakened us, we understand we're Elohim. All these things are actually us. And so, and I'm just trying to show ways to validate that through this intuitive process. And so that's why I'm bringing up these different things, because I think we see them weekly, daily, whatever, we all experience it. And there's nothing that's by coincidence, if that makes sense.
I have a question. I'm sorry.
You can go ahead. Are you?
Okay. Are we not meditating when all of us are connected on Saturdays, Sunday, and Mondays? Is that not what we do? We talk about things that we want. Well, I would do. Well, we talk about everything that's happening in the universe. So are we not meditating when all of us are connected on the line on those days?
Yeah.
That's
Go ahead.
That's what I meant. That's what I meant earlier when I said that we are constantly in a state of meditation, always. As long as our desires are for change in this earth, or for balance in this earth, that desire itself is a state of meditation. And even when we are talking, when we are just having these discussions on these opportunities to reveal who we are on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, yes, meditation. When we're at work, yes, meditation. Regardless of where we are in a meditative state. All the time, whether we recognize it or not. The reason we have trouble recognizing it is because we have been told what it should look like, as opposed to making an effort on our own to understand what it should look like. Does that help you?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
No, thank you. I was going to say this. Yeah, these calls are kind of like a collective desire for us to, to be what we're supposed to be. And so, definitely. Thank you, Pastor, for that. And I'll tell you something else too. When you're in that intuitive state, one other thing we can touch on is, how many times have you thought about someone and we don't realize how much we can affect people around us, or even the connection that's there, but you think about somebody and then all of a sudden they text you, or someone texts you about them, or you think of something that you had. Like I've been in a state where there's things I need to do in the day, and and you don't write them down. You kind of lose thought of it for a minute, and then all of a sudden something, whether it be a commercial or something comes across and says, and it reminds you, oh yeah, I got to get that taken care of today. And so all these things that man tries to approach us with from a marketing standpoint, that they've kind of tapped in from that regard, going back to the money discussion we had earlier. But really, that lets you know that it's in all of us, because these things happen to us day in and day out, and we think it's maybe a coincidence. But subconsciously, you're reminding yourself, for instance, if you've got to go pick up something, you've got to go see someone, if you got to drop something off, and all of a sudden these reminders come back to you. That's the other aspect of the memory that we were talking about that goes beyond the recall, is that being connected and locked into everything around you in the environment. So none of these things happen by coincidence. And that is one of the reasons, too, we're in a constant state of meditation. We're desiring, you're operating, you're functioning as who you are, but everything is a part of you, and then all of humanity is connected, and each time you take a step closer to thinking and aligning with that, you start noticing these things more and more. But yeah, nothing is by coincidence, and that just goes to show you that when you see that, your intuition is at work. So you may think of, wonder how Evelyn's doing today, and there's a text comes across from Evelyn. So all these things just kind of validate our connection, and we can actually see these as markers for our connection and our walk and who we are, if that makes sense.
Yes, that makes sense. And what I wanted to speak on, when Pastor, talked about 11:11, and it made me just think about the spiritual meaning, of, the number one. If we look at it in sequence, in terms of the singular one, the double one, the triple, and the quad. When I look at the number one, it talks about the number one is your life path number. It means that you are likely to become more of a leader than a follower. It also means that you are highly creative. And as I think that we all are one yet many, when we look at number 11, it symbolizes enlightenment and inspiration. And it says the number 11 represents female and male equality and has a vibrational frequency of balance. And I'm referring in reference to what we've been taught and how we continue to manifest as Elohim. The triple ones talks about, it means that an energetic gateway has opened up for you, and this will rapidly manifest your thoughts as well as your deeper aspirations into your reality. And 11:11, quad, it says this number is your connection with the spiritual plane, which determines your capacity to manifest your desires and wishes and achieve your maximum potential. And so when I reflect on the number 11:11, I think about 11:11:11, which was the gateway when we had met as teachers. And all of us who are on this call today, I see the spirituality aspect of our senses, really manifesting in a way now that we are, again, the creators, creating this experience. So again, when Pastor referred to 11:11, it made me just think about looking at it from the spiritual meaning of what number 11 means. So I just wanted to share those thoughts.
Thank you, George. That makes perfect sense, and it lines up. And the one thing when you were speaking, I was just saying, if you're waking up at a certain time, or that 11:11, like, you're trying to sleep, you can't, but just embrace it. Embrace it, because it's not a coincidence. And I think just embrace it because the meaning behind this it's significant. And sometimes we may be seeing a sign of something that's there for us, and we turn away from it because of what we want to do physically, or just like yeah. But so embrace it, and that's what I say when if there's something that seems coincidental this week or pattern, embrace it. Will someone get ready to say something before I don't want to cut anyone off?
And I appreciate your comments, Ash, and I just wanted to, just kind of elaborate it only because I know, that Barbara, had, gathered some information together that we were reflecting on the 11-11-11, and I just see it having a significance in the now, right at the moment, in terms of how we all see it as one. So I don't know if, Barbara, you maybe recall any thoughts about that, but I just thought it was just significant and meaningful that we are, just talking about numbers and looking at 11-11. And as parents have mentioned, I'm done.
And one of the things is functioning as we embrace that we are functioning as Elohim. One of the things that always stood out too while you're saying that too, George, is that we're always in the right place at the right time. And whether that goes back to what Experience Charles gave us early on when he was talking about leaving the kid in the hospital. We're Elohim, we function as Elohim. We're always in the right place at the right time. And we just now, we're getting to understand of why that is and how we should be functioning. But we're always in the right place at the right time. And that's just a part of that guidance that takes place for us during the day, and just that spiritual awakening, that spiritual awareness, wherever you are when you feel it, just know that it's not a coincidence. We're always in the right place at the right time, and that goes back to the earlier lesson we talked about being what we needed to be for someone. What we know when we needed to, just understanding when to interject, and but we're always in the right place at the right time because we're functioning as Elohim. Does that make sense? Makes sense. So.
Yes.
And I think, as we go forward with some of the things we're saying now, it seems like there's more clearer answers for yesterday. And I think some of the summations and the things we brought up today, it even goes back to yesterday when we brought the question of being creative versus shaping. And a lot of these things just kind of really build on that and validate that thought of the difference between the two. Because now, not only do you tie it to your identity, but we understand that we create without trying to control. And we can be what we need to be and really react to what's going on around us without trying to actually shape it. So this discussion today really is answering that question that came up yesterday even more in depth, because we do have a lot that goes on around us. Kathy was talking earlier when she was saying that earlier. I was thinking about the discipline of understanding what's going on around us and being aware of it, and keeping the discipline to do what's best instead of trying to react. Center yourself and be disciplined to do what's best, and take your time to approach and assess, and that takes discipline as well. It takes a lot of discipline awareness not to overreact or react to something so fast or so uninstinctively. So I'd love to see all of this kind of coming together today based on where we we started at and where we're at right now with some of the earlier comments and questions and thoughts. And one other aspect of it that I wanted to kind of touch on and on this intuition is that I think we talked about dreams a little bit yesterday and really how they can help us. And just remember, just based on this too, that the dreams it's a more powerful and purer form of the intuition. And it kind of it's another validation as well that even if you can't remember every aspect of it, you remember that feeling, the thoughts you have, the interpretation of it. It's just another validation of a form of the intuition too that we possess. And so it's all these things kind of work to our spiritual awareness and development. And when we start putting them together and we look each day for the guidance and the walk, we see how all these things come about and really help us to be purposeful and to be Elohim. All these things sort of work together, and so we just we're just being. And now we keep using that term, but hopefully all these things kind of help us line up and sort of give you an individual benchmark of. It may be different for each person. You may be experiencing more of one thing than the other, but just know that when you're in the midst of being aware of something that you saw as a coincidence, it's not. It's a pattern that is there to really shape and guide us and make us even more spiritually aware, because that's just a part of the evolving, the development that we always talked about this age sense, is that it definitely evolves, and the more we get better with aligning ourselves with our desires, the meditation, and then using that to guide us during a period of time in between. And it's just these things will form, and they will help us, and they will help us help each other. And so nothing we really get is for us. We've always been taught, understood. It's just always something we engage in because of who we are. Does that make sense?
It does. I think that we covered quite a bit of ground today.
Yeah, it seems like we did a lot yesterday too, but yeah.
Yeah. So maybe we should look at leaving this to be pondered and picking up tomorrow. What do you think?
Yes. Yeah, it's a lot. I would just say, everybody, if you're not on tomorrow night, just definitely go through the week and just take a little side note of all the things we view as patterns or coincidences and just kind of see how you feel at that moment in time. But I definitely think we unpacked it a lot today, and this would be a good stopping point, a place to put a pin in it. Any other thoughts or questions before we sign off here?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone have a good day.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay.